In 5:15, I'd like to call the Wednesday, September 3rd, Board of Public Works meeting order. We stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
No changes. I'd look for an adoption.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Barrington to adopt the agenda as proposed. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public input. I'm going to open up the floor for public comment. Just a reminder, public comment is not intended for question and answer or dialogue with the committee. You're invited people with the opportunity to give their input on a topic. If you have any questions or want more dialogue, I would ask that you reach out to our staff and our other person for that conversation. Please come up to the microphone at the table so we can hear your comments. When you come up, please state your name, address. Please keep your comments at 3 minutes or less. The clock will be divided on the screen to help you. And I will shut you around a little after 3 minutes. You'll be shut off a little bit. We'll let you finish your sentence.
Perfect. Darla Meshke, 1615 Nassau Street, New London. Now, this is the only time I can speak, correct?
Correct.
So this is not a public meeting.
It's public comment.
Correct. But don't know what you're gonna, I can look at the notes, which I did last week, and the one thing I wanted to comment on did not happen. It changed and we weren't aware of it. If this is not a public meeting, if it's a closed meeting and I can't speak only in the beginning, then it's a waste of my time. I want a public meeting where my voice is heard. And that's not what this is. Is that correct? Then I will leave, because it's not a public meeting unless you answer my questions. Then it's a meeting for you guys, and then you have that separate. A public meeting, you need to involve the community. There is so much that happens, 10 people vote on it, or an appointed committee. And who's the appointed committee? Friends of a friend of a friend? And the statute changed how many years ago with public commenting? You don't allow it anymore. It's changed it within the state. So again, then you say, oh, go watch the YouTube. Not everybody has social media. When there's things that are this important to we the people, which is everybody in the community, we need to get everybody involved, not a closed meeting where it's up to certain people and I can't speak. So for me, if I can only speak in the beginning and not in each comment or topic, it's a waste of my time. That's why you don't have people show up at the meetings. If you come here and you were voted in, please do what we the people are looking for. Maybe we should put in a separate well for everybody. A well is $10,000 rather than 40 to 70 million. Again, I have tried and tried, but if I can't comment and speak during the meeting, this is a waste of my time because you're not listening to me. It's not your fault. It's something that got started years ago. By who? That's a good question. I pay taxes, but yet I can't speak. Then you might as well, again, I'm repeating myself, just have it with you guys then. If I want to watch what you're talking about, I can read the minutes. I can go to YouTube and watch 45 minutes at my time. For me, if it's only public comment right now, it's not worth my time. I thought we were a community. Public should be public so we can all speak. Thank you. And I appreciate what you do, but you need to get everybody involved. You need to hear our voice. Thank you. Well, nobody listens to us. You say you do, but you don't. So again, it's a waste of my time. I will watch it on YouTube. And even that, I won't even watch it on YouTube. The meeting from last week, the last I looked, and I probably looked at it 3 times, had 94 views. You've got 7,000, how many people in New London? I'll get back up there. I'm not, oh, my 3 minutes is done. But you've got 7,424 people in the community. It's not just you, it's all of us. And you're separating the community by not getting us involved. No different than the streets downtown, the solar system, plant, whatever it's called, not system. You need to involve us. We're paying taxes. That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you, and I appreciate what you do, but you need to get us, the people, involved. Not a closed meeting where it's just you guys. Thank you. Sorry, it's not worth my time. Because I came last week, waste of time. Now I know.
Anybody else want to speak in a public comment? Anybody else for the public comment? If no more, we will close the public comment. Looking for approval of the August 4th, 2025 minute meeting. Motion was made by Mr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Ritchie to approve the August 4th, 2025 meeting minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And are carried. Well, wastewater treatment plant updates. Ben?
Good afternoon, everybody. So as far as the digester project is going, Sanchez Coatings is at the plant right now. They finished their 2300 cementatious mortar and they're putting the primer on right now, and tomorrow hopefully they will finish with the 6000. Then the coating will be complete. We can get August winter here with the crane to put the cover back on. Next is budget. So for the most part, I don't have much in the budget other than the increase for benefits and fringes. The only things that I do need to increase is the repair of equipment. With the elderly status of the plant, there's a couple pumps that we haven't touched for probably almost 14 years now. They're still running, but we don't know how long they're going to continue to run. So to have those 3 pumps rebuilt would be a considerable amount of money. So just in case, I want to have that in the funds to take care of it. Also with the sludge disposal, as I have stated in the past, it's getting harder and harder to get rid of our liquid sludge. We have to go 20 miles to get rid of it. So that unfortunately increases the cost to haul. So I feel once we get the digesters back online, it should break down better, but we're still gonna be hauling quite a bit of sludge out. So I would like to increase the sludge hauling to $210,000 for next year. Does anybody have any questions regarding the budget? So in my report, I've outlined some of the charges that we have for the septic and holding waste that are coming into the facility from haulers. I would like to increase these rates for 2026. Some of these have not been changed for many years. And I feel it'd be fair if these rates were increased. Just a quick go over the chart that I have shows what other facilities are charging in the area. These are basically our direct competition. So we're not basically the only place that these haulers can go. So we have to, if we want to continue to take the stuff in, we can't raise it crazy high. So we want to stay competitive. So if anybody has any questions regarding the costs that I want to increase these to, just let me know when I hit those, if that makes sense. So for the annual permit, we're only charging $15 for the annual permit. and it costs way more for me to send all this stuff out to mail it than the $15. So, in going with what everybody else is doing, I'm suggesting $120 annually. Holding waste, I would like to increase that 50 cents. It's basically in the ballpark of everybody else. It's a little bit higher, but because of the size of our facility, it's easier for us to handle it than say the smaller communities up there. Septic waste, I would like to increase it $10 per thousand. I think we'll still remain competitive. Our biggest competitor for septic is Nina Menasha Fox West. But they don't accept straight up septic tank waste. They make sure that it's blended with holding tank waste. So it's really hard to determine exactly what their charges per load. But basically that 74.12 is what they charge for septics. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay.
So when you say septic waste, that's like if somebody puts on a septic tank.
Yep, so septic holding tank, depending on where you live, if your septic field is able to perk, you'll have a septic tank. If you can't, like say you're near groundwater, you have to have a holding tank. So that's the
We're gonna have to not allow comments being answered from public, or they're gonna ask something on everything, and that's why we had the public section.
okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Grease. So we started taking grease in 2019 when we redid the digesters. We have had some issues with it, and the amount that we're charging is not covering what we actually put into it. So I'm suggesting that we increase our grease traps to $150 from $30. Now it seems really high, but most places will not take it altogether. And the other ones like Green Bay, and I don't even think Appleton takes it anymore. They're over 200. So if people are willing to bring it to us, then we'll at least break even and to help get rid of the sludge once it goes through the digesters. But we do make some gas off of it, so it does give us a little bit of a benefit. Then the last one is Galloway. They're at $30 per thousand, and I would like to keep them at that because once we get our digesters back up and running, it does produce a beautiful gas that we can use. It basically helps us offset our heating charges, and we don't have to buy as much natural gas. And then if we do go to BioP for our plant upgrade, that because it's basically sugars, it should be able to blend in to keep our carbon ratio up there to help the BioP work better. So I don't want to raise that at all. And last is porta potty waste. We do not classify that currently. I would like to make a classification for that. And because when you're getting these bigger companies come in with a full truck, as opposed to like 10 gallons or whatever, we do notice when it gets dumped. So we're gonna have to charge them more for that. Sometimes it does affect our sludge and it basically floats to the top of the tank. So I would like to raise it to 45. Does anybody have any questions as to the rates that I would like to charge? And this would all, if we did agree to this, this would all take place Jan 1 of 2026.
Any further questions for Ben on that?
So I think what we do is, because this is these are all in the ordinance yet, right?
Correct.
Correct. So I think what we should do, we're trying to get all the user fees out of the ordinance and putting them in the fee schedules. So if there's any suggestions for Ben to refine, now's a great time. Otherwise, we bring this back as a fee schedule and an ordinance change to pull it out of the ordinance officially, not that they conflict. You know, pull it out of the ordinance officially, and then we'll make a fee schedule that you guys will approve, since you're not talking about till January 1st anyway. We bring that back at that point in time.
Yeah, and I would like to have the information, because usually in November I give all the septic haulers like the fees that we're gonna charge and the annual permit fee for actually dumping. So I'd like to have all that ready for when I send that out in November.
I was looking at the fee schedule aspect of it for the October meeting, so.
Perfect.
I'm not on this committee, but I just want, I'm totally in favor of raising these prices because when we have all these haulers coming in the city, and I've said for years, that's truck traffic, that's wear and tear on streets, we need their stuff to make our plant work because our plant's so old and it's overbuilt, but, is there a way to like, all of these haulers that come or townships that are bringing their waste to us, to let them know how bad flushable wipes are? And I mean, I don't know how much of that stuff comes in,
A lot.
from outside of the area when they get their septics pumped. You know, we can send out a letter to our utility customers with the utility bill and say, do you know how much flushable wipes cost the city a year? It's astronomical what's driving our cost up. But what about the stuff that comes in on the kettle truck? Boom, you know, I'd like to see more than just a fee increase on a fee schedule. But the other thing I wanted to mention is if we have a harder time getting rid of our sludge, the more salty stuff we get in from Bear Creek or whatever, the pickling process, salt is a soil killer. And farmers are starting to find out that I don't want that stuff on my field, and that makes our sludge less valuable. Sludge, obviously, with the price of fertilizer, is a valuable resource for farming, but if it's the salinity or the salt content of it, we need to figure out to charge more for that because it makes our sludge less valuable. So as we talk about the fee schedule, I'd like those things in consideration, I guess. Wear and tear on the streets to the plant or whatever, you know. We've all driven down Wolf River Avenue, we know it's taking a beating. But those are other hidden costs of accepting the stuff, and I'm all for fee schedule increases for non-residents using, basically, you know, we need the load. But I just wanted to make that comment, not on the committee, but I think this is a great step looking at these. So,
Yeah, and as far as like chlorides go, sooner or later, we're gonna probably get a permit limit from the DNR regarding that. And then we would have to basically stop taking that stuff in. Or charge them so high that they wouldn't wanna bring it in, so.
Any further discussion? Now we'll just do what Chad forward, just to put it into the fee schedule and with the ordinance wrapped into that. All right, thanks, Ben.
Sewer camera, last meeting, we discussed getting a sewer camera. And does anybody have any questions regarding purchasing that? I know we all agreed that would be a good idea. It would be a great tool for our employees and stuff.
Anything that saves us the outside expenses.
Yeah, just,
Worth a little upfront fee and take care of it.
yeah, a lot of this that we can do in-house will save us a large amount of money.
Any further discussion on that? Not, I'm looking for a motion.
So move.
Motion made by Mr. Barron, and second by Mr. Dorsey to approve the purchase of a $20,199 push camera setup for televising sanitary and storm facility. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Right.
Yeah, here's the big one. No updates and discussion on a wastewater treatment upgrade with possible direction.
Alright, so we met with, Donahue and USDA, on a Zoom call a couple weeks ago, and Mike is here to present to you what our options are, and he'll field any questions that you may have regarding this.
First, before we start, after some discussions and some items that came up on Facebook, we had a meeting to kind of go over some of the hot topics that had come up and put some answers together for some items that were brought up, and I'll let Chad go through that and roll right into Mike for the treatment plan.
In an attempt to try to get the word out for education and just awareness of what's going on in the treatment plant, we did post some social media information out there. There were some comments and questions and some statements that were on social media that frankly were incorrect. So we want to make sure that we're starting to get out the correct information. So these were some of those comments and questions that we saw online that we thought we'd bring up just to kind of make sure we got the right information out there. So one of the comments we saw was, why would we be charged more for this? Don't my taxes already pay for these upgrades? And frankly, no. The wastewater treatment plant is not financed through taxes. It's financed through your utility sewer bill. So it's a completely separate fund. It's not, directly tied to the city's general fund, which is financed through tax dollars. That fund is financed through user fees. So no, your taxes do not play for the treatment plant. Now, some of the benefits of this is, number one, the higher treatment plant users, say like industrial and manufacturing sites, do pay more for usage and any future upgrades than residential households. And then also, paying with the user fees also would require nonprofit groups, say for a tax exempt church, to pay their fair share of the service and the upgrades. So a tax exempt building would, if these upgrades and if the services were paid through taxes, a tax exempt service would not pay for those upgrades. So just a little information, nope, wastewater treatment plant is not paid through taxes, it's paid through your sewer utility. Another question we saw online was, why wasn't the city saving up for a complete rebuild of the plant 20 years ago? Well, the simple answer is we didn't know 20 years ago what the regulations would be imposed today on the city. That doesn't mean that haven't been planning and working on upgrades. The city's been making upgrades. The last major one occurred in 2019. But no, the city was not aware 20 years ago that we were going to see the regulations that we see today. The fact is that the city was notified 3 years ago, because we saw some of that information. How long ago did we get notified? We were notified 3 years ago in 2020 of the change to our permit discharge limits. And since then, we've been working on trying to figure out an investigation for the best path forward. That also ties into, well, didn't the city just spend $4 million recently on a treatment plant upgrade? Yes. 2019, we awarded a construction contract for $4.38 million for some repairs and small upgrades to the plant. These upgrades did not change the overall process of how the plant treats wastewater. It provided necessary repairs and then also allowed the city to take some high strength waste to bring in some additional revenue to the plant. And the reason for that was that helped offset some of the large losses we saw in revenue when Saputo Cheese closed down. Saputo Cheese was a major user of the treatment plant because they were producing cheese and they had a large discharge into the treatment plant. So they were a major user, and that was a major loss to the revenue stream for the treatment plant at that time. So one of the ways we tried to offset a little bit, Ben came up with the idea of trying to take some high strength waste to help additionally offset the expenses of the plant. So those were a couple of things that we did in 2019. So some of the timing of the events, people were kind of questioning, well, how long has it been going on? What have you been doing? So again, we were notified in June of 2022 of the new limits that were required. Plants of newer design that could accommodate the newer limits, those effects would have to go in 2025. Since our plan is an older design, the DNR is allowing us more time to get in compliance, and the new limits will go in effect 2029. So from in that June 2022, and then the staff were notified for about a year, the staff was doing investigations. There was a lot of paperwork and reports that Ben had to fill out, send to the DNR, showing what our situation was. That just helped us show that, the need for our limits to go in effect in 2029. Also during that time, staff talked about and tried doing different things at the plant within the current restrictions of what the processes are designed to plant, to see if, a different process that we can currently do or different chemicals of the plant, to see if those new, if we could tweak the plant enough to get to those new restriction limits that that are required by the DNR. In the end, it was determined that the limits of an existing 50-year-old plant with outdated design technology could not reduce phosphorus to comply with the new DNR regs. We tried, but we give Ben and his staff kudos for giving it a shot to see if they could do it. But unfortunately, just the old plant, the design wasn't intended for the current requirements. So in 2024, we hired a consultant, Mike is here, and was hired to investigate and made some engineering recommendations and upgrades to the plant to comply with new regulations. So in 2024 through 2025, staff worked with the consultant and providing information and dialogue and work with trying to get the information of what those future upgrade possibilities would be to comply with those new discharge restrictions. So again, we talked about on June 20th, Mike provided a great initial report, providing several options for upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant with in mind for complying with those regulations that are coming down the road. Ben, you might have picked up too, Ben just talked about the liquid sludge challenges that we're having. So, in the last year, we've got another obstacle coming. We're facing increased challenge of disposing our leftover liquid sludge, which is traditionally applied to farm fields, but there's increasing regulations for that coming down the road, and the increasing competition with mega farms. So Ben's having to ship liquid sludge farther away to farther fields to dispose of it. Installing new technologies that we're considering to create a dry sludge is much easier to dispose of. It has much less regulations to deal with. So if we install a dry sludge system with this whole project, that's something that we can maybe possibly look at becoming a small regional site for other wastewater treatment plants that have liquid sludge to bring their liquid sludge here to dry in our system. That potentially could be additional revenue to help finance any of the costs for a drying system. Again, to be determined, but something we're trying to look at all our options for bringing in revenue for an upgrade like this. Again, that's a 50,000 foot elevation overview. There's a ton more, as Mike knows, there's a ton more technical details and everything about this, how the DNR came up with their limits and what we can do, what we can't do with the new design. So a lot of research has been done over the last 3 years since 2022, when we first were notified what our new limits are. But not only just to comply with the limits now that are being imposed on us, but like Mike said in his last presentation, future generations. This is something that we need to look at, how this can adapt to the regulations that are probably going to continue coming. The DNR is not going to lessen up those regulations. We all know they're going to continue increasing them. So what do we need to do to get us set up for the future of success for future generations? If anyone has not watched the video where Mike provided some great information, we strongly suggest watching that video. He gave a great overview in what's going on with the plant and what our options are at this point in time. So I think Mike's going to touch upon that a little bit tonight as well. But just a quick overview, some of the comments that we saw on Facebook, we want to get the correct information out there. If anybody has questions, contact us. I mean, we can most certainly have that dialogue. We'll let people know exactly what's going on, or talk to your older person as well. So with that, I think we go to Mike, right?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to switch to Mike's laptop here.
All set?
I think so. Yep, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Chad. That's really a great setup for some of the material I'm going to go through. Again, my name is Mike Gerbitz. I'm a wastewater engineer with Donahue and Associates. That's the consultant that Chad mentioned. And a lot of this material, we went through this in June. And then we adjourned here and we all met and toured the existing wastewater treatment facility so that all the electeds could get an up close look at the facility. Tonight, I think kind of the emphasis will be on the funding side of these alternatives, but before we get to funding alternatives and strategies to pay for these different alternatives, I think since it's been, I was last here in June and we went through this material then, I think we should briefly go through some of the background information behind those alternatives, why they're necessary, what they are, and then we'll start talking about the costs. And then tonight's an important night, I think, to remind everybody that you are on the clock, that you do have a compliance schedule in your permit, and it takes an awful lot of time to design and especially build things today. Construction schedules are long. We'll look at an overall schedule, implementation schedule. But I think the moral of the story is with that compliance deadline that's in your permit that the DNR has established for you, the city would be wise to continue to make progress. And what are the implications if you don't meet your compliance schedule? If a community kind of willfully decides they're not going to advance things the way they need to, then one of the things you would do is lose your access to the low cost money that we're going to talk about tonight that comes through the Wisconsin Clean Water Fund. So you lose access. It's kind of really counterproductive. These projects are far more affordable if you have the Clean Water Fund available as a funding mechanism. We'll see that in a little bit here. And then, of course, ultimately, the Department of Justice will pursue your compliance if a community willfully just drags their feet. So nobody wants that. No one intends for that, but that's the reality. You are on the clock. You have a compliance schedule. It's important to just make continuous progress because there's, believe it or not, precious few months before 2029 is here. And then please, at any point, don't hesitate to just interrupt and ask a question if you have a question. I think it's just very quickly important. I think it's important. It's important to quickly kind of establish who we are as a consultant. Donahue and Associates, headquartered in Wisconsin, really all we do is wastewater and water treatment. About 80% of our work is wastewater treatment throughout the entire Midwest. We're one of the 20 largest wastewater treatment firms. There's a industry publication out there called the Engineering News Record that ranks from the size of their business, ranks the different engineering consultants in different categories, and we're in the top 20 in the wastewater treatment category. So we're very much a focused and specialized firm in wastewater treatment. As a wastewater consultant, it's also really important, as you'll see if you haven't already, wastewater is expensive business today. These capital costs are, it's never going to be cheaper than it is today, but they continue to increase. Regulations continue to get more stringent, and as a result, wastewater treatment costs, the capital costs to build and to build these systems continues to increase. As a wastewater consultant, we need to be plugged in on the different strategies to fund these systems. So that's another area of expertise that we bring. And I think we're well versed on the different funding programs that are out there, and we'll talk about some of them that are realistic options for New London. That includes grant sources. There's not a lot of free money today, but where there is, we've been very successful in securing grant money or principal forgiveness money, but it's in dwindling supply in recent years. We'll talk a little bit more about that. A brief summary, Chad went through some of that, but just to reiterate some of that and remind people of the situation, the EPA approved what's called a total maximum daily load for the Upper Fox Wolf River Basin. And that total maximum daily load, that looks at the total pounds of different pollutants that can go into that water body. That total loading gets distributed to different users. One of those users is the City of New London, and you have a total maximum daily limit
or load allocation for phosphorus. Okay. And the result of that is the community gets so many pounds per day that they can put into the river. On a monthly average, the maximum that can be is 10 pounds per day. That's not a problem, but the 6-month average is 3.3 pounds per day. Okay. City of New London can discharge 3.3 pounds of phosphorus into the river. That equates, during the spring of the year when your flows are up, that equates to 0.25 milligrams per liter. Your current limit is 1, and it's been 1 probably since the 90s sometime. 0.25 is, that's a low limit, and you don't have, that's what was talked about earlier, you don't have the technology required to meet a limit of 0.25 milligrams per liter. That's one of the, that's getting down there to where it's one of the lower limits in the country. Wisconsin has regulations in place that result in these low level limits. And what New London is doing, a host of facilities around the state have already done or are in the process of putting in technology themselves. So this isn't a unique situation for New London by any means, but it is, from a national perspective, 0.25 is a low limit. Okay, and I make that point because you require some of the best technology out there, the more recent technology, to meet a limit like that. That becomes effective. This is the compliance date that I was talking about. That becomes effective July 1 of 2029. The bottom line is the facility can't meet that new phosphorus limit. So that's why are we here tonight? Probably more than any other reason we're here tonight, because you have a compliance schedule for a new permit limit, a very low phosphorus limit. But what are some other things that should be considered as you contemplate what's the wise investment? These are long-term investments. That facility's been there for 70 years. These are long-term investments. You want to make sure every dollar you invest today is well invested for the future. And it's wise to stop and take a look at the condition of the facility and make sure you're spending smart money today for those future generations. One of the things to consider is the age of the existing facility. And the DNR actually requires us, when the community finally submits an analysis to the DNR and says, we've looked at different alternatives and this is what we're going to do, they force you, this is an EPA regulation that flows down through the DNR, the regulations require you to look at a generation at a time. You need to look at a 20-year horizon, okay? So through that lens, I think it's important to recognize that it's an aging facility. Almost all those structures at the end of that 20-year planning period will be 60 to 90 years old. Some of them are 70 years old today. And a lot of that equipment is at or has exceeded its reliable service life. And I think you all saw that up close. I think that was the purpose of that walkthrough, is to appreciate you have aging infrastructure, you have aging equipment, and you own all the issues associated with that. And that facility, it's tired, and it is time to make some significant upgrades there to get through the next generation. So you have an old aging facility, and then you have a plant that was built for a different time. It was a different service area with different users. Technology was at a different place at that time. The result of that, and it's been piecemealed together, it's kind of a patchwork of generations. There was one process, and then another was added, and another was added. And the product of all of that is you have a very complicated facility, okay? There are a lot of unit processes, and we're going to see this is a schematic of your facility. Blue is the stuff that treats the water. Brown is the stuff that treats the residuals or the solids that come out of that water from the treatment process. And if you look around the state, this is one of the more complicated treatment facilities in the state. A lot of different unit processes. You pump the water 3 times. That's very unique. I think the only one that I know of right off the top is Manitowoc. This was a plant. It's complicated. It was built for a different service area at a different time, and the product or the result of a facility being this complicated is it costs a lot to upgrade it and maintain it, and it costs a lot to operate it. let's talk about this schedule. Again, we're here tonight because you have a permit that requires you to meet a new phosphorus limit. It also has a new TSS limit, but you'll be able to meet that. Okay, phosphorus is the driver.
Can you explain TSS?
Oh, thank you. TSS, so you might hear me or see TP, that stands for total phosphorus. It's all the different forms of phosphorus. That's what your phosphorus limit is. TSS is total suspended solids. Those are the little particles, the solid material that goes out the back of the plant. There's not a lot, but there's more than zero, and that's a regulated pollutant as well. The solids that leave your plant, you have a new TSS limit that's lower than your historical one, but the plant would be able to meet that. At the top, that is what's in your permit. This schedule is in your permit. You need to, and I'll just go through it quickly. Preliminary compliance alternative plan, that's an analysis that the department required you to submit in June. You did that. That's what we talked about at the June meeting. You've met that compliance alternative or requirement. Then in June of 26, the DNR requires you to submit a final compliance alternative plan. That's when you need to make a decision. If not sooner, you need to make a decision as far as the department's concerned. Here's how we're going to meet this more stringent limit. You've already told the department we can't meet it without doing something. Item B, that's in your permit, that final compliance alternatives plan, that's when you tell the DNR how you're going to meet it. Plans and specifications. So you told the DNR we have to build something, we have to provide, we have to have something that we don't have here today. You need to show the department how you're going to build that. You need to submit the plans and specifications for those improvements. They review those and they approve them. That's due in June of 27. And then out here in 29, D&E, those are, again, these are all out of your permit. You need to be done with construction by June of 29, and you need to start achieving compliance by July of 2029. Okay, so the black one at the top, that's what's in your permit. The one at the bottom is keeping you in compliance in the kind of in the real world. If you were to chug along at the pace that the department would allow you in the top schedule, a contractor would not have enough time to build the type of improvements that need to be built here. Or you would put that tight, very tight deadline on a contractor and the cost would be significantly higher, okay? You crunch a contractor, you take time away from a contractor, their cost has to go up, their risk goes up, they need to expedite things that need to be expedited, and as a result, you pay more, okay? That you have enough time, that isn't necessary. Let's take advantage of the time that we have. That's what we're showing, or that's what's up on the screen in the blue schedule. The final compliance alternative we show here, I've tweaked this a little bit in a later slide, but the bottom line is you need to move faster than the DNR is requiring you to in your permit. So we're suggesting that you start design this fall yet, very soon, so that you have a 12-month window going to, what is that, August of 2026, so that you can bid the project, put the project out for public bidding. You need to publicly bid these projects. You put that out for bid in the fall of 26. That's the ideal time. That's the ideal bidding window, is in the fall of 26. Contractors are looking for their next, the work for the next year. They start ordering all their materials and their equipment, so it's on site when the next construction season shows up in 2027. Then we show down here construction for a project of this size, irrespective of which of these alternatives that we're going to look at in a little bit. These are significant projects. You give the contractor 30 months to perform the work, so that you don't pay a huge premium. So the goal would be bid it at the right time, give the contractor enough time so that you can meet that compliance deadline D, with the contractor having 30 months, and have enough time to start up your equipment, get trained on it, debug it, and be in compliance by July of 2029. June of 2029. Okay. So the blue schedule is a schedule that I think we would strongly encourage you to pursue so that you don't pay a premium for any of these improvements.
What's 31 through 36 month?
That'd be like final completion. That'd be their finishing up the punch list
Punch
items.
list, okay.
See that? Thank you. And that's up in the construction season, warm weather. Any questions on that? Because that's a really important driver here. Is to continue to make progress.
So they know what we need to do. They give us this timeline. We need to crunch this timeline to get it done before they say. That doesn't.
You'd get done. Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Doesn't seem right to me. I mean, if we hit A, we hit B, and we hit C, and it takes longer to build than D. That doesn't make sense to me that we're forced this. I've about had enough of the state government, by the way.
Yeah, so I think the permit writers are permit writers, and they don't deal a lot with construction. So what we're showing in the blue schedule is you're finishing the project according to the schedule that they've established for you. D and E line up with what's in the permit, okay?
Yeah, I get that, but isn't there a way to get a hold of the state and say this isn't right?
Oh,
You
I
can't-
see.
You can't do it that fast?
Yeah, they'll be more than happy to let you go faster.
Oh.
So what we're showing here is you submit plans and specs way ahead, like a year ahead of when they're saying you have to. All we're doing is going faster so that you don't
This
pay.
is a big project. We take our time. We can't.
You don't meet the, because if you submit plans and specs in June, DNR has to review and approve those. Your contractor's not gonna get started till early 28. And that's one construction season for that contractor. So we're meeting the deadline. The ultimate deadline is D and E. We're meeting the ultimate deadline. But we're moving faster on a couple of those intermediate steps so that the contractor's got enough time and you don't pay any more than you have to. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you're answering the question.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. So let's talk about the alternatives. We really looked at three primary improvement alternatives through that 20-year or beyond, that generational or multi-generational perspective. You own all the issues that are out there. What is the cost so that we have so we've got alternatives on equal footing. Let's look at alternatives that address the issues that facility is facing today and in the relative near future. One alternative is to add effluent filtration. So this is an aerial photograph of your facility on the right. The green structures would be upgraded, okay? The blue structure is an entirely new process, and that's what would give you your compliance. That's what would achieve compliance. I went through this slide last time, but that's a filter. It's a cloth media disc filter that many other facilities around the state have elected to use to meet this limit. It's almost like a coffee filter. It's a coffee filter around some discs, and the water flows through the coffee filter and it holds back the phosphorus and the little particles, okay? That filter, that cloth media disc filter would be in the blue box. That's an entirely new structure. We would demolish or remove one of the tanks that's there that you aren't currently using, and we would build in that location that cloth media disc filter process. When this facility, if you proceed with this alternative, you're left with old technology in a complex facility, okay? It's lower capital cost, but you're left with essentially what the plant that you have upgraded with a filter. So that schematic that we saw before has been modified to show what would be different if you proceeded with this alternative. We would remove the trickling filter. We would add filtration, but we would add a fourth pumping step. I don't know anybody in the state that pumps it 4 times. There'd be a fourth, you'd have to, the hydraulic grade requires you to pump it again. So if you proceed with alternative 4, you would be left with a complicated facility that, again, it costs more to upgrade and maintain a more complicated facility.
And if I'm understanding this correctly, it doesn't do anything for those teal buildings that we witnessed some of the infrastructure that is starting to fail.
The equipment inside would be replaced and the buildings would be rehabilitated.
Okay,
Okay.
so that would address those issues.
Like, yeah, if you probably got some that need roofs, all the electrical gear would need to be pulled out and replaced. All the aging equipment in those teal processes and structures, that would be replaced.
Okay,
Okay,
Question,
yes.
you say you're putting that filter. What do you do with what's in that filter? Supposedly we can't put that anywhere. Where is that gonna go?
Yeah, so when we were out at the facility, there was one very large circular tank that had a cover on it. That Ben said, we haven't used this rock, it's a rock media trickling
Right.
filter. We haven't used that in a long time. The contractor would go rip that out. And then he would build this structure where that currently sits.
But then we've got a filter full of phosphate. What do we do with that phosphate?
Okay, so then the coffee filter captures all of those, that phosphorus. And then it ends up in your sludge. The phosphorus ends up in your sludge and it goes out to the fields. Okay, and that's really true of all of these technologies. The name of the game to comply with this phosphorus limit is get the phosphorus in your sludge. So you'll have slightly higher phosphorus in your sludge today than you, when this project is done, than you do today. Okay. And a little bit more sludge. So it ends up in the sludge.
And also, like if we rehabbed all this stuff, you gotta think there's also all the pipes and conduits and stuff underground that need
Yes.
to be rehabbed too. So you're basically digging up everything and basically putting the same thing back.
Yeah, yeah. And this is, there's pipes going through where that blue building is. This is ugly construction. And it's kind of risky construction for a contractor. You know, when we talk about capital costs, we look at ranges. I think this is where, at this very early stage, I think you're more vulnerable to cost creep with an alternative like this because of all the rehab work and working around existing processes. The permit says during construction, you need to keep maintaining compliance. And so we need to come up, when we talked about this a little bit when we were down there, we need to have very detailed construction sequencing plans. All the more reason, if you were to pick this, the contractor needs a lot of time. He can't just go in here and build something. He's got to build something and then provide provisions to bypass or work around unit processes that are offline for a while. This is a challenging, complex project to do that type of, that pervasive of an upgrade in an existing facility that's as tight, you know, physically tight, without much room around structures. This is a very complicated project for a contractor.
So this is not a question, this is more of a statement. Goes back to I think all of this is stupid. I know we have to do it, I'm not arguing that fact, but so now we're gonna take the phosphorus out so that we don't pump it into water here. But we're gonna put on a field so it runs into water over there. I just want the citizens to understand, this is the state forcing us
Yes.
to spend all this money to move the phosphorus from coming out here and being discharged here instead. I just wanna make sure they know that.
Yeah,
they
that's an important
understand that
point.
This
Nobody in
is
this
dumb.
room, this isn't the idea of
It just-
anyone sitting in this room.
But just,
We're all trying to
we get a
figure
lot
out
of
what's the
comments and
right
stuff,
way
and
for
it's
the
like,
city to
this,
meet this.
it's ridiculous that we gotta spend. This is a lot of money
just to get it out so that they can put it on the field over there so it can run in over there.
Yes, Dave, on the same note, the farmers need the phosphorus, whether it comes from our poop or they buy it from Russia, they're gonna need the phosphorus on the field
I understand.
to continue to.
Grew up on a
feed
farm.
us.
I understand how all this works, but we are
Right.
doing a runaround right now because the farm fields put in 20 times more phosphorus than the city of New London does.
And in June, that's what I asked too, but I've looked in, that's a different regulation. They're growing food for America. We're processing water.
Still gonna end
So
up
we
in a
can
river.
There's a really, I think, an important point. So not all of these costs are just from phosphorus. A lot of these costs are to keep that facility, get that facility in the condition to continue to operate and perform and meet its other limits. You know, for another generation to deal with the age and condition issues.
Oh, and I understand that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That thing is old. It does need to be redone. I completely understand that. I've been through there. It's,
So
we
the thought
spend
is,
a lot of money on maintenance that we shouldn't be spending.
so is the true thought on that phosphorus when it's distributed into a field, that the ground helps filter it before it gets back into the water system?
Ben, do you inject?
Yes, we do. So, yeah, we have to stay a certain distance from the water table. So we have to find fields that have, I think, more than 3 feet before you get to bedrock or the water table. We also have to stay on flat land. It can't have more of a slope than 6%. The soils have to be of a particular type. They call it Chayactin soil. It's basically like a sandy clay loam. So it can percolate, but not just drive right to the surface or the groundwater. But another thing that I've heard is the DNR over time is going to start putting phosphorus limits on the fields too. Right now, our only limiting factor is nitrogen loading. If you do phosphorus loading, plant uptake, especially with corn and soybeans, only takes out the nitrogen and then leaves a lot of the phosphorus behind. Well, if that starts becoming a limiting factor, there might be 10 years that you can't go on a field until the crop rotation breaks down that phosphorus to the point where you can put more on. So that's why a dryer is one of the better options that might be out there for us.
From that perspective, no question about it. And I think Dave's touching on an important point that if you get the phosphorus in the solids and then you put the solids on the fields, it ends up or can end up in the receiving stream or some receiving stream. DNR is becoming increasingly concerned about that. So I think Chad might have mentioned there's a lot of factory farms or mega farms or whatever the term was used. We're seeing more and more of that, especially in this particular region. And those agricultural operations need nutrient management plans. And so as a result, they have a nutrient management plan. They might want your biosolids, but they're maxed out and they can't take any more nutrients. And that's another reason why you're driving 20 miles up to fields to find some that, you know, it's acceptable to land apply on those fields. So that's the pressure, and the pressure will continue to build on land application programs.
On this option, maybe you're gonna go into it a little bit later, but does this give us the flexibility for future additions, changes for the other things that are coming down the road? I mean, Ben, you're monitoring what, nitrogen and stuff like that now?
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a limit yet,
No,
but
and we
we're
have no
reporting
way
to the
of getting
DNR what that is.
Okay.
Can this facility facilitate those removals as well?
Not really. I'm glad you asked that. We're here tonight talking about phosphorus. Another nutrient that all regulators, EPA Region 5 for sure, is concerned about is nitrogen in the receiving stream because of hypoxia in the Gulf of Mexico. If you're doing a facility plan in Minnesota today, you need to look at your alternatives for compliance with 10 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen in your discharge. That's a low limit for nitrogen. You don't have a limit for nitrogen today. But Wisconsin now is putting in monitoring requirements for different facilities. Illinois is. It's not a matter of when nitrogen will be a regulated compound. It's not a matter of if. nitrogen will be a regulated nutrient. It's a matter of when. Okay, and Minnesota has started that process. Illinois is starting to put treatment goals and monitoring requirements, and it is a matter of time. Maybe it's a couple permit terms, but it's a matter of time before nitrogen will be regulated. The other two alternatives that we're going to look at will provide biological phosphorus removal. So you can remove phosphorus without chemical addition, get it in the bugs, get the bugs in the biosolids, and minimize your reliance on being a chemical junkie and using just chemicals to meet your phosphorus limit. So it provides biological nitrogen removal, but that same process can be configured, and that's what we would recommend here. Configure it so that you can easily accept a total nitrogen limit when that day comes. This alternative, you're not able to accommodate nitrogen.
So to accommodate nitrogen, we would have to insert another new process
Yep.
into this already complicated process.
Yep. And you don't have room for that. And that would involve more chemicals probably. In fact, this is kind of nuanced, but that big trickling filter, that big tower that we saw when we went on our tour, that's your big trickling filter. That does a good job of eating carbon, the BOD. It consumes the carbon, and that works against your ability. That process that you're pumping up to, that really inhibits you from using that precious carbon to remove phosphorus and nitrogen. Okay, these other two alternatives that we're about to look at, it uses, it's configured in a way so that carbon can be used for biological phosphorus and nitrogen. There's a fatal flaw for biological nutrient removal with a process like this. The other alternative that we looked at is alternative 5.1. If you recall, we looked at 5.2 and 6.2 when we get to that. The 0.2s meant we looked at putting this facility somewhere else in town, okay? Moving it to a different site. It's natural for a community to say, hey, it's kind of been here a long time and the community's kind of grown around it. Before we make a big investment like this, wouldn't it be wise, or shouldn't we look at moving it outside of town? And we did, and it adds a lot to the cost, around $20 million just to get it to that other site. So these numbers that you're going to see, we did look at relocating the facility, and you can add roughly $20 million to all the costs that we're looking at. So the focus has been, so I think since the tour, the focus has largely been on what's the right alternative at the existing site. Okay.
And just in a nutshell, why would it be more expensive to relocate it?
Yeah, so all your wastewater flows down to this wastewater treatment plant, and you pump it up to your different processes right down here. If we moved it 3 miles away, for instance, that was one, I think it was about 3 miles away, you need to build a pump station that can pump it 3 miles, and you need to build the pipeline to get it there through town, that 3 miles. That pump station and that piping, let's call it for conversation purposes, about $20 million, okay? It's a very expensive construction. You might imagine wandering this, 16-inch force main through town. Takes a lot of money to get it there. And then you start the process of building and paying for your treatment plant.
Yeah, but then we gotta fix all the roads too.
Yes, yes. But I think it's important for the community to know, you start looking at numbers like we're looking at, people say, why don't we just build a new plant someplace else? The community did, and it adds a lot of cost. Okay. So this alternative, I'm sorry, I'm going a lot. This alternative would effectively give you a brand new treatment processes on your existing site. The purple facilities that we're looking at, again, on the aerial on the right-hand side, those would be demolished and they would no longer be there. The blue structures would be brand new structures. And the administration building is in, what color is that? Teal. That facility the administration building would be upgraded, okay, for another generation of service. This is, we'll see in a minute, we'll look at a schematic in a minute. This is a very simple facility to operate. It uses today's present day technologies. If you look around the state, not a lot of people are building new facilities today, but if you look around the Midwest, those that have a phosphorus limit and know nitrogen limit is likely, they're building this type of process, okay? It's an activated sludge process that is configured to provide biological nutrient removal. The difference, so this alternative, 5.1 and 6.1, the liquid trains are effectively the same. Biological nutrient removal, activated sludge, followed by a filter. Okay, the filter that's going to achieve your phosphorus compliance, followed by UV disinfection. The difference between these two alternatives is what we do with the biosolids. The residuals that come out of the treatment process, the solids, for this alternative, they'll be handled effectively the same way you've been handling. You would land apply Class B biosolids. Class B biosolids, that's what you produce today. Those are heavily regulated. Okay, DNR wants to know where they're going, how much are you putting on the fields, and you need to live within the parameters. Needs to be an approved field, soil types, needs to have certain setbacks, and it needs to be applied in accordance with allowable loadings on the fields, okay? This would make a liquid product that's probably, it would be one improvement over what you've been doing historically, is you probably have roughly half the volume, because we'd be able to get much thicker with different technology. We would have a thickener in here. You currently haul 3%, something like that. Let's call it that for the conversation. This would produce 5.5%. That means a lot less, about half the amount of water would be hauled out to the fields. Okay, there is a benefit to that. You wouldn't have as much liquid hauling. But it's important to understand this would make Class B material. Class B material, you do it today, it's allowable today, it's allowable for the foreseeable future, but there are pressures on where you can haul it. There's also concerns about PFAS and biosolids and other, who knows what comes next. I think people are still concerned about PFAS and biosolids. I think we're going to find that we've seen a lot of data. I think that'll become the rare exception. But people are concerned about PFAS. People are concerned about the potential exposure of their households to this material. So you are, when you make a Class B material, you are vulnerable to regulation changes, stuff that's in the sludge, and the regulators have to regulate it, and they might make land application even more difficult or outlaw it. So you're vulnerable to regulations. You're also vulnerable to bad press. Okay, Maine found in a couple of biosolids instances, Maine found PFAS and they outlawed land application altogether. Okay, there's a big news story, got a lot of people worked up and concerned, maybe rightly so, maybe not, but they were concerned, and the legislature said no more biosolids land application in Maine. Oklahoma, I think, is contemplating the same, and so is Texas. There's lawsuits out there where that's in jeopardy. So it's not just regulations, but it's public opinion, and what's in the news can change things very quickly. So what I've highlighted in the bottom there is this is a good, sound investment for future generations, and I think that's the proper perspective to have at a time like this. Are we spending good money not just for the next 20 years? Are we spending good money for the next 60 years? Okay. This is a sound investment for future generations, but the biosolids train might need to be replaced, sometime before the end of that 20 years, okay, for the reasons that I just explained. That's your one vulnerability with this unit process. Viable today, the community might decide this is the right investment today, but just do so knowing that that unit process, your biosolids program, may need an upgrade at some point because of changing regulations or changing public opinion. Make sense? Okay. Here's what this process looks like. If you recall, here's what you've got today, a lot of stuff that needs to be operated and maintained. Here it's much simpler. We pump it, we screen it, we get the flushable wipes. Thanks for mentioning that. That's the scourge across the industry. We screen it, we put it into an activated sludge DNR selector. That's what removes our phosphorus and potentially nitrogen, an oxidation ditch. Okay, that's a very simple, well-proven activated sludge process, and there's many of them here in Wisconsin. Secondary settling, okay, that's where we allow the bugs to settle to the bottom. Our cloth media filter, UV disinfection out to the river. Okay, we pump it one time. Biosolids, remarkably simple. With this process, you don't need a digestion phase. You pull the solids off the bottom, you thicken them up to 5.5, let's call it 5.5%. You put them in a storage tank. Twice a year, you haul it out to the fields like you do today and land apply it, okay? Here's what that process looks like. This is, I said not a lot of people are building new plants. It's a handful here in Wisconsin. This is a new one. That's a 3-ring oxidation ditch. In the foreground, that's the selector. In the background, those are the clarifiers. Disinfection is in the far back. That's an oxidation ditch in Ixonia, Wisconsin, that was commissioned last year. Okay. Someone also asked, is it expandable? You know, good things happen here in New London and population grows. We're envisioning this could be configured so that you could mirror image some of these processes and accommodate a pretty significant expansion. You could build new activated sludge adjacent to the ones that would be built first. You could add a clarifier. This could be configured so that there's room to accommodate some growth. Also, activated sludge systems are far more forgiving and allow you to accommodate growth much better than fixed film systems. This is an example of that Ixonia plant. What you're seeing in the dark solid lines, that's what's been built and commissioned today. The dashed blue lines represent the future build out. It was built with expansion in mind, and I think that New London would be wise to have an eye on the future and its next expansion here. Okay, but you can see how easily that was able to be expanded. The next alternative that we looked at, again, the liquid train, identical. The one difference here is now you would be producing what's called a Class A biosolids. You provide heat treatment to it so that there's effectively no pathogens in the material. This is like Milorganite. Okay, Milorganite is a dry Class A product that we could buy in the hardware store, and a lot of us have, put it on our lawns. This would make that type of product. This is unregulated, okay? People could come to your facility and take it. What most people have been doing, and we've worked on a number of dryers, I can't remember, I think it's like 8 or 9 here in the state. Most people have a large agricultural user say, I'll take it, and they show up with the truck and they haul it out to their facility. And you don't have any paperwork, and it doesn't need to be on approved fields. It's effectively unregulated. Once you meet the threshold of producing and you prove to the DNR, this is a safe Class A material. Class A EQ. Your metals would have to be in line too. It's Class A, exceptional quality. New London has all the ingredients necessary to make Class A material. So instead of that big tank, the liquid process up here at the top, that's identical. We'd put it through a thickener. You would hold it for a while, maybe a month or 6 weeks or something like that. So you would store this material because you don't want to start and stop that dryer every day because it takes a lot of energy and heat it up like your oven. So you turn a dryer on and you run it until that batch of biosolids is processed. So you thicken it up, you'd store a little bit, you'd take as much water out as you can practically get out of it. So in this step, I'm going to do the reverse. In this step, once you get to this temporary WAS storage, 95% of the material is water. Once you come through the biosolids dewatering, there you you effectively just squeeze water out. Now you get it to 20% water. Excuse me, you get it to 80% water, and then your dried product, less than 10% of the material is water. Okay, and that's like the Milorganite you buy in a bag at the hardware store. Then that would go into a silo, and it would hold it for several weeks, the material for several weeks. And most likely a farmer would make arrangements to have a truck come here, pick up the material and haul it to their facility. Any questions on that? I'm going through this stuff really fast, guys. but, Don't hesitate to
I
ask.
know a lot of the people are worried about the smell. Is there any issue or, any difference in what kind of smell these give off?
Yep, I think where you are, so both of them have the potential. You have a tank now that's open to the air that has the potential and probably does at times when you're mixing it up, that creates odors. With this alternative, where you're handling Class B liquid material, the odors we would expect to be the same unless, and I think we would look at this during preliminary design, we could put odor control, we put a cover on that tank, we capture that, the air that comes off of that tank, and we put it through odor control. Okay. The same is true with the biosolids. We would recommend where you are, we've designed dryers with and without odor control. Where you're located, we would put in odor control. You pull the air off this process and put it through some sort of scrubber, something that takes the odor out. You don't want to spend money like this and then have odor complaints. There is a solved example that's very similar to this alternative. This is over by the Wisconsin Dells. It's in Lake Delton. Here's their 3-ring oxidation ditch. There's a selector there. There's their clarifiers. And then they have a dryer. It's shown in the bottom right. That's the dryer at Wisconsin Dells, Lake Delton. Okay. This tall silo, that's in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Adjacent to it, that big semi, that's the semi after it picked up a load of the dry material, pulls up underneath the silo, and they load that truck and it hauls it away. Here's what in the hand, that's a photograph of a dried product. And then in the far bottom left, that's showing you all of those are dried products. All of those could be Class A EQ products. There's a host of different types of dryers out there. One of the things that is really important during preliminary design is to pick your different processes and different big pieces of equipment to define your overall costs. So that preliminary design phase is the most important phase of the project that really defines your cost fate. That's where you should pick your dryer, and the dryer that you select is going to determine what kind of material you're going to produce. Okay, there's different styles of dryers, and it can make different styles of product. Anyway, the point is this alternative in the top, the aerial photograph in the top left, that's really this alternative. Okay, that someone else has. Because of all the pressures on land application programs and the concern about making sure a community is spending good money today for the tomorrow, you're seeing a proliferation of biosolids drying in Wisconsin. And on the far left column, those are facilities that either are operating dryers or they're under construction. And on the right, those are some that we know about that are in the planning phase or the design phase. So if we go back 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, Milwaukee was the only facility in the state that dried its product and made Milorganite. It's done that for generations. Okay, since that time, in the last 10 years, you can see how this list has grown. A lot of communities have said, this is the right long-term investment given the direction of land application programs. Again, I just want London to understand you're not alone in making this decision and considering these different alternatives. Okay, any questions before I get into the money part of this? I'm sorry this has gone so long, but it is a complicated topic. Okay, alternative number one. This is the method most communities in the state use to fund wastewater treatment facility projects or big upgrades like this, where they're spending a significant amount of money. They use the Wisconsin Clean Water Fund. It's a state revolving fund program that's funded by or managed by the Wisconsin DNR, and it's federally subsidized, okay, by the federal government that effectively buys down these interest rates. Okay, so you can see that I've got listed here some of the highlights of these different programs. For years, you would have to pay the loan back in 20 years. Probably 5 years ago, actually Donahue had something to do with this, we pushed the department to allow these terms to go to 30 years, like other states. So now you can carry the loan for 30 years. You get a little bit higher interest rate, but you can see that this is a very favorable interest rate, 4.85% on 20, 1.55% on 30 years. And those interest rates are subsidized for communities like New London that have a median household income where yours is, okay? If you guys were a more affluent community, that those percentages would be about 1% higher or something like that, okay? This is a federally subsidized program that gives you very favorable interest rates. You need a revenue stream that's 110% of your debt service. Unless you have other covenants, and I think we determined that you probably do not. And then here's the one place where there's easy free money for you guys. Because of your median household income or your situation, the size of the community and your median household income, the DNR will forgive $1 million of this project cost or any project cost to meet the phosphorus limit, okay? So there's effectively a grant. But being a federal program, it comes with some strengths. You have to pay state wage rates, or the contractor, you ultimately pay for them, but the contractor has to pay state wage rates. The contractor needs to use American iron and steel. And then most recently here, they've added this Build America, Buy America, which means the major components of the plant need to be built here in the United States. That was very challenging a couple of years ago. A lot of the big manufacturers in the industry have found a way to comply and move production to domestic sources. Okay. Okay, so most people in the state use the Clean Water Fund. Communities like New London, the size of New London with a median household income where it is, will often use rural development. And that's one reason why I wasn't here last month. It took us a while to connect with USDA. They lost a lot of staff, and it took a while to get in touch with those guys. But what you see on the screen here is the product of that conversation with the department. So rural development is also a federally funded program or subsidized program, and its goal is to keep keep the user rates 1.5% to 2% of the median household income. It does that by providing maybe a kind of a better interest rate. It allows you to go 40 years. Okay, so you can take these loans out for 40 years. The interest rate's not nearly as favorable. It's only 4.25%. And one reason why rural development was very popular until recently is there was a fair amount of grant money that could help communities. In effect, USDA buys down your user rate to the point where it's at 1.5% to 2% of median household income, okay? They would use their grant money to buy down those user rates. The funding picture is not as favorable today as it was, several years ago. Last year, the entire state got $9 million, okay? They're not sure they'll get $9 million this year. And I think, and there was little optimism. I think USDA was trying to be realist. There's still a lot of uncertainty, but there's very little optimism that you're going to get a grant amount here from USDA that moves the needle on your user rates a lot. Okay, there just isn't enough grant money to go around. So my recommendation, again, our goal is to always be conservative with costs. That's our goal. I personally would look at USDA and assume you're going to get zero grant money based on the conversation that we had with them. Again, a federal program, wage rates, American Iron Steel, Build America, Buy America. Another way you could do it, and you've done other projects here, everybody does, you could use revenue bonds. As we sit here today, revenue bonds are typically 20 years, and the interest rate today would be in the vicinity of 5.25%. Okay, 5.25%. Those revenue bonds typically require a debt coverage of 110%. So you need to raise rates enough to pay for the principal and interest payment plus 25%. You need to have some reserve capacity there. Okay. That's more stringent than the Clean Water Fund. Clean Water Fund requires 110%. The one benefit to this is it doesn't come with all those federal strings. Okay. So what we will say is contractors would love it if you used revenue bonds because they don't have all the encumbrances of the federal program. I promise you a project, if you told the contractors this is going to be funded with revenue bonds, your bids will be slightly better on bid day. But no one knows exactly because there's no parallel universe where we can know with certainty. And I don't think it's enough. We did bid one project once with state revolving fund and revenue bonds, and we saw a couple percentage points different. Okay, I don't think this is the game changer. The fact that contractors will want this job a little bit more. I don't think you're going to see a huge reduction in costs on bid day. Okay, so here's our alternatives. This is what I've highlighted in yellow. There's alternative 4. That's upgrade the data filter and upgrade the facility. 5.1 is Class B liquid alternative. 6.1 is to add a dryer. With these different, with the Clean Water Fund and USDA, you don't start paying for your loan. You make your first principal and interest payment on your loan the first May after substantial completion. So what that means is you can continue to increase your rates during construction. Okay. And we often do that. A lot of people do that now on bigger projects. It just helps the ratepayers, feather these increases in. So you don't need the rate increase on day one. So what we're looking at here is, let's say you decide to move forward with one of these alternatives and the project won't be done until mid-2029, then you could ratchet in a rate increase in 26, another one in 27, another one in 28, and another one in 29, so that you're ready to make that principal and interest payment come 2030. Okay. Just using as much time horizon as possible to feather these in. And then these would be the rate increases for those different alternatives if you chose to do that. This isn't different from one user to the next, but we looked globally at what is a typical residential ratepayer going to see as an increase. That's what's shown on the screen. Garden variety typical residential ratepayer would see increases like this. Okay. So $9 a month for the next 3 years for alternative 4, $12 a month for the next 4 years with 5.1, and $17 a month for 6.1. Okay, so those are monthly increases year after year. Does that make sense? Because that's an important point.
I got a little bit confused. So what you're saying is every month it would increase by 17,
No,
or it would be a $17 increase
in 2026, and so that would be the increase on that. 25, they would go from whatever they are in 25 up.
Say they're 20
$17.
now.
Yeah, they're 35. So you would add $17 in 26 to every monthly bill that year, and then in 27 another 17 to every monthly bill,
Okay.
and so on.
Thank you.
So January, December, sometime frame like that, you'd say, here's what our rates are for next year. And I'll bring this all home so that we look at total bills. And here's where the monthly, I should have jumped to this. Here's your monthly cost today for a typical residential user in 2025, okay? $36. In 20, and then you would see what those rates would be in 26, 27, 8, and 9, okay?
And in 2030, they would hold tight hypothetically to the 2029.
You would not
rates.
need another increase to pay for that principal and interest. Yep. Okay. This is challenging to see. It was intended to at least provide use some information in the handouts. But I wanted to provide you with, so this is the monthly cost in successive years for those different alternatives. And it's also showing where the rate is today. This is showing the different parameters for the loan. One thing I do want to say is we built in I can't think of a big project where we ever had change orders of 5%. But that's a requirement that you build in that 5% contingency, okay? That's included in these numbers. That's a clean water fund requirement. When you close on your loan, it will include that 5%. I've got the different debt coverages in there, and I'm not sure, we're still looking into this because of the relationship between the water utility and electric utility here. I've assumed a 25% debt coverage, so I think that's conservative for the clean water fund. There may be some good news there. We could ratchet that down to 10. And then I built in $1 million grant. This is hard to see in the back of the room for sure. $1 million grant and principal forgiveness. And then what I've highlighted in the dark yellow are these different alternatives: 4.1, 5.4, 5.1, 6.1. And here's the annual cost over here under annual residential bill. That's what annually a typical residential ratepayer will pay by year 2030, right? Or at 2029. And then, oh yes, sir.
What would this do to industry?
Their costs would go up proportionately. That's typically how it's done, is they would also see the same type of increase.
Now, what I'm wondering is they're paying the biggest majority for like water use in the city. Would that put us in danger of losing some of these
Yeah, that's a good question.
industries in town?
You know, you always hear that. That's usually the first reaction from the industry themselves. But I've been doing this a long time, and I've never seen an industry leave because of the wastewater rates. Now, at some point, we would recommend, when you've got good cost certainty at the right time, you talk to the industry and bring them into the conversation. And then at some point, you will need a public hearing for rates like this. You will need a public hearing to approve the facility plan and submit it off to the department. And that's an opportunity for the industries to weigh in.
So I have a question going back to the previous slide. When you were talking about these rate increases going from 3640 annually to the 7285, 104, specifically regarding the $104 increase, and maybe this is a question for Ben as well. By putting in the dryer, that gives the wastewater treatment facility some potential for earning capacity, correct?
Correct.
So that could potentially bring that dollar amount down by having the dryer in. But without the dryer, it's 85. Okay.
And you're paying to dispose of liquid sludge.
Yeah, and
Oh, so that would be another.
yeah, we'd
increase.
still have to do the liquid sludge, and we're not guaranteed to have available fields. So let's say we decided not to get the dryer. 15 years down the road, we lose all of our fields. It's not viable for us to spread anymore. Then our other alternative is to find another facility to take our sludge so they can dry it.
And we're paying for that.
And we're gonna pay for that substantially. Or you do go with the dryer, but you're not gonna get it at the rates that we can get it at now. You know what I mean? So you're gonna be paying more to get the dryer in the future than if you just did it right now. And I realize it's extremely expensive.
It is, but in my thought process, and I just wanted to make sure that I was thinking correctly, that the 104 is the worst case scenario.
Correct.
Where we could actually make that lower with the dryer.
Correct.
Whereas without it, that's gone and it could cost us more. So we could potentially end up paying 104 without the dryer.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Because then we would have that, as of to date, that $210,000 cost savings of hauling
Yes.
liquid sludge,
Yep.
which in 4 years could be who knows what.
Yeah, cause I mean, next year, we go back to bid for getting rid of sludge. They could say, no, we're gonna do 10 cents per gallon as opposed to 5.5. So we're not guaranteed that they're gonna be reasonable.
And I have two more questions. For our 3640, which we pay to date, where do we rank within like cities amongst the state? Are we high, low, medium? You know, I'm trying to,
I think we're kind of lower medium right now, but I mean, everybody else has done their upgrades. So you can look at all the stuff in the state and it's gonna be like, the larger ones have already met their phosphorus limits and done all this. So it's just gonna be a revolving thing where everybody's gonna be paying more at some point. It's just when.
We look pretty closely at that. And I could come with slides and show what different peers are at. Ben is right, you're the low to medium. And that's really evidence of how long it's been since you've done a big project there. It is really a treadmill. You do your big upgrade, you go up to the top, and then over time you come back down and somebody comes and passes you up and it just continues to revolve like that. On the national average, you know, you guys are well below national average. Nobody wants to pay for a dryer. Nobody wants to do these big upgrades, but you're seeing some of your peers get to numbers like this. Reedsburg, you know, they got as much grant money as they could. It wasn't a lot. Reedsburg spent over $100 million on their project to build a new facility, and they're in the about $90 a month. Jefferson is electing to do a major upgrade. They're in the $100 a month. So your peers that have been faced with these similar decisions and decided, let's make sure the money that we're spending today is well invested for the long term. They're seeing numbers on the order of this. Okay, communities your size that are faced with these issues. This wouldn't be unique to New London. Okay, not minimizing the tremendous cost, but
Well,
it's
and
kind of the reality of today.
in my mind, we were well aware that this was going to create an increase. But we've also been very cognizant in New London of the ratepayers and making sure that we are doing everything we can to create an income for the wastewater treatment facility. And having seen those numbers and how that's kept the ratepayers' rates lower, my expectation would be that we would be able to lower this $104
Okay.
in some way, shape, or form, whereas the 85 might actually increase substantially.
And if we didn't get a dryer, we could potentially lose, like, at some point, maybe it's not viable for us to take in septic waste anymore.
So we're
So that's
losing that
revenue
revenue.
that we would be losing. That's almost $250,000 annually that we're making off of that. Then what?
I just wanted to make sure that my math was mathing correctly.
It is.
I'd assume that the operating cost per year is less with the new facility,
Yes.
be less chemicals
Yes.
bought, less.
Yep.
The electrical
Yeah.
costs alone.
This is looking at principal and interest, but there was another analysis that we did that looked at that, and with the dryer, the $200,000, it costs less than that to operate that dryer. So your disposal costs, if you were to put in a dryer, your disposal cost is zero. somebody is gonna come and want these nutrients. You know, it's free malorganite. And the cost to operate the dryer is less than the $200,000. So
Yeah.
a long way to say, you're right, your operating costs are less.
So I understand that something has to be done. Let's just say, close your eyes and say nothing had to be done. At that $36.40 right now, what would you project in 4 years that cost could go up if, just saying we didn't have to do nothing? You know, you have an annual increase always?
Yeah, and like, just, we'd have to do something because the infrastructure is getting so old
I
that
guess-
we,
What I'm going for is if our plant could at current level, I know it won't do this, but if it would be able to obtain for 4 more years without doing anything to it, what would these rates be in 4 years? Like your 36.40 each year.
It's gonna go up anyway.
It's gonna go up anyway, is what I'm trying to
Been
say.
here for 6 years. and
Hey,
his
John,
Budget has went up.
I
every
just
single
did
year.
some quick, if
For
your
fixing
rates go
stuff.
up 5% a year
Yep,
till 2029, and I probably should show that. If your rates went up 5% a year, you'd be at roughly $45, okay? Instead of 36.40.
yep. I just was trying to throw a little, you know, things are gonna go up in 4 years, is what I was trying to say.
Yep. Yeah, and I probably should provide that perspective, because you're not staying at 36. This might give someone the impression that 36 is where it's
Yep.
gonna be for a while. It's not.
So if we do this for 20 years, does the rates come down after 20 years?
You will have, that's up to you guys. We've seen some communities decide to actually lower their rates. And then others have said, no, we're gonna take that money and we're gonna put it in the bank and we're gonna help pay for future upgrades. Because your revenue will outstrip your spending at that point. One thing I did want to show is, one reason why I included this, it's an important point. What we're looking at in these graphs assumes the most favorable funding strategy for you guys, which is the Clean Water Fund 30 years. Okay, it beats USDA, and that's why I included all these numbers in the packet, and it's why it's up here on the screen. Is you can compare the different funding strategies and look at the monthly increases or the monthly bills for these different funding strategies, Clean Water Fund, USDA bonds, with the different assumptions that are shown on the screen. And you can see that the most favorable for the ratepayers is a 30-year loan with the Clean Water Fund, probably because you guys are eligible for 1.55% interest, okay? If you look at all these, if you compare these numbers side by side, these different alternatives, that's the most favorable for New London. And that's consistent with what most people find. I also wanted to point out, I put in here the percentage of the median household income on the far right side, okay? For these alternatives, remember it's 4, 5, 6, the yellow highlighting. What percentage of the median household income would these sewer bills be for the typical residential user? And I assumed, here's your median household income reported one today. I assume that's going to go up 3% a year, okay? Because it's not static. I can change this at a moment's notice, but just to provide some perspective, if that median household income goes up 3% until 2029, then the dryer option is right at 2%. Okay. What's significant about that? EPA has for years said anything above 2% is excessive, anything less than 2%. This isn't me talking, this is what EPA has said. That's the threshold where the rates become excessive, a burden, a particular burden. And you can see that going from 20 to 30 offers, a tremendous reduction in that monthly bill. 20-year loan versus 30-year loan. Another thing I wanted to point out, a lot of people get very interested in RD, and because they can, the purpose of RD is to buy down your rate to between 1.5% and 2% of median household income, and they've got grant money. So I wanted to see, is it in the realm of possible that USDA can buy down the dryer option so that it's the same as the Class B liquid option? Okay, can USDA come up with enough money so that your dryer is the same cost as your Class B sludge tank option? It's not in the realm of possible. They need to come up with $25 million, and that won't happen. Okay, I just wanted people to understand that. It'd be real easy to have some wishful thinking. Well, let's go for it, and let's get a big grant. There isn't enough grant money to go around. Okay. Any questions on that? I'll keep plowing. Okay. So where do we go from? Where should the community go from here? I guess here's our suggested next steps. We talked about this before. This is a bit nuanced. There is a way you can buy more time, and that's through the multi-discharger variance that expires in early 27. Your compliance deadline is after that. Today, as we sit here today, MDV does not buy you more time, and you are one of the very last ones in the state. You guys, and we're helping Oshkosh. Oshkosh is in design right now. You and Oshkosh are a couple of the last ones in the state. Okay, so you've got, DNR is going to say we're giving you as much time as we're going to give you. And we're checking the box that MDV, as we sit here today, isn't an option to buy more time. I would suggest you start preliminary design in September, no later than sometime in October. That's where you make all your big cost decisions. We've looked at this thing from a very high level. You've got to make decisions on particular pieces of equipment and how there's thousands of decisions that need to be made, but a lot of the big ones are made during preliminary design. When you come out of preliminary design, right now we have very high level, graphics depicting these alternatives. When you come out of preliminary design, you've got something that you can actually do takeoffs with, like a contract, and get much better cost resolution. So you know where the money is, how much it is, and at the end of preliminary design, you're equipped with better information to make good cost decisions. Okay. And we'll look at the schedule again. I think it's in the community's interest to get going fairly soon with design. You submit your clean water fund intent to apply at the end of October. I bet Ben knows about that. That just says, hey, we're very interested in the clean water fund, and put us on the list. And then by come January, like after the holidays, you'd be in a position to have that preliminary design information and better cost resolution to make your final decision. Okay. And at that point, I think you will need to make a final decision on which of these alternatives are right for New London. But our suggestion, we've done this on other big projects across, Wausau, go to preliminary design, put drawings, make your equipment selections, go tour other facilities, put together a far more detailed and enhanced cost opinion with a lot better cost resolution. And then you write the facility plan report, that final report that DNR requires. You write that report, and you have your public hearing, and you adopt the community, the elected officials accept the facility plan and say, this is the alternative. Okay. And I suggest you do that in about the January timeframe, and we'll look at the schedule in a second here. With this type of rate increase, you will need a public meeting that's open to comment. The elected officials of the city approves and submits that facility plan to the DNR, and then you proceed with the detailed design. Okay, the final completion of those plans and specs. A lot of your big decisions will be made. Now you put together drawings and specifications that define all the work that, for the project, so that you can be in a position to bid it next fall. So here is, if you remember the PCAP, or that preliminary compliance alternative plan, we did that in June. Check the box, that's done. DNR is saying by June of next year, you need to tell us your final answer. What are you going to do? Our suggestion is, and again, we've done this on other big projects, Wausau 80 million, La Crosse 60 million. You do preliminary design, and you write the facility plan armed with that better cost information. and you submit that to the DNR January, February timeframe. Okay, make your final decision at that point. We could speed up the facility planning part, but since you got to get going with preliminary design, why not wait till you have better cost resolution? So that when you, one reason we've done that in bigger projects is so when you stand in front of the public and you say, here's what it's going to cost, you can do that with more certainty than you can after, you know, a high level evaluation or study. Okay. And then you proceed to final design and you put yourself in a position to bid it the fall of next year, and your contractor's got plenty of time. And then what we're showing on this timeline, we don't have to go through it here, but those are the different milestones for your Clean Water Fund application. You guys, because you're eligible for principal forgiveness, you have to submit, you guys will need to submit plans and specs no later than September. We're suggesting you get a little bit ahead of that, but you lose your eligibility for that $1 million grant if you don't submit before the September deadline. So we're suggesting you do it a little faster.
September of 2026?
Yes, yeah. So a ton of information, but given the magnitude of this, I thought it was worth some time to go through from the very beginning. I appreciate everyone's patience. Happy to answer any questions anybody has tonight. Oh, one more thing. I would suggest, so one could say, hey, we should really make our decision before we get preliminary design. Preliminary design is that 15 to 20 that we're talking about, is like 15 to 20%. If the community's still intrigued with both alternatives, you can do preliminary design. Tank is fairly straightforward. It's a tank and some pumps to mix it. The dryer, a lot of nuance and cost variability with the dryer option. My suggestion, if the community is intrigued with drying, take that to at least the preliminary design stage so that you're armed with as good information as you can have before you go in front of the public and say this is the right alternative. And I don't think you're paying a tremendous premium. Food for thought.
Any further questions for Mike? Being them, I'd like to thank you and Ben. This is a huge it's a huge project. We're not trying to hide nothing.
Yeah.
People think we're trying to hide
Yeah.
something. It's not money that we could have saved to have this in a bank to do a project like this. It's unobtainable. It's
No one, I've been doing this a long time. No one's paid for a project like this out of cash reserves. No one does.
Thank you for your time, and we'll take it from there, I guess.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
I also too would like to thank you for all your work on this.
Pleasure.
And constant communication, how hard you were on the USDA. Like, you should have saw the emails, like pushing them, like, come on, we really need answers. We need to get going. And just that work alone, well appreciated.
Thanks, Robert. Our pleasure.
And I know you got a long road, so no need for you to hang around. If you want to pack your goods and get rolling, please do.
Take you up on that.
We still have quite a bit to go.
Before we move on, I'd also like to thank Chad and the staff, because there was a lot of Facebook comments out there that were not true. And for you guys to take the time and actually list them on there and show the answers, the real answers, so people know.
Yeah, we know this, obviously, this is a huge project. We're starting to push out the information for awareness, for information, you know, what's going on, you know, we're being forced to do something, like, you know, this is major. So we're at the front end of it. Now's the time to get involved and get educated. So we'll continue to do that.
Okay, thanks very much. Next, citywide garbage collection discussion and direction. Robert?
Okay, so in the last meeting, we went over the RFPs that came in. And you required the city's cost be added to this, so you can have a overview of what the final cost would be to the resident. So I put together the spreadsheet. As I indicated, these numbers did reflect adding It was 93 cents. To the monthly fee. On the first year, going up a penny each year, to 2030. So it's 93 cents, 94 cents, 95 cents, 96 cents, and 97 cents respectively, year wise. This is including a 25-cent anticipation in case the fuel cost did happen to go up. We weren't going back to try to recoup costs, if we are charging this upfront for the year. It'd be really hard to then go forward to the following year to upcharge those costs that came in. Does anybody have any questions on this spreadsheet or how it's laid out? It's pretty well defined as far as yearly costs to residents. That year period, it also has the total average costs over that 5-year program listed on there for both aspects of garbage only and garbage and recycling. I guess with seeing all those numbers, the biggest question is it in this committee's opinion to pursue a citywide contract, knowing that these are the costs?
What's the average cost right now for residents annually? I had an email from somebody.
66 and change a month.
$266.40.
How much?
266.40.
So right now it's $266.40 per resident.
That's when I looked up mine.
Okay,
And that is a yearly.
Yeah.
266.
okay, so it's 110 cheaper for GFL. For garbage only. I have a question about the billing of this, because I've heard it explained 2 different ways and I need to be clear on how. So the billing would be as a special assessment on the tax bills, correct?
It falls under that box, as a yearly charge.
Okay, so some kind of a yearly charge on the tax bill. Is it taxed per parcel? Or is it, because I know this discussion has come up. Tax bills come out per parcel. Some parcels have multiple addresses on them. So is it going to be one charge per parcel or one charge per address? So if a parcel has 4 addresses, I can think of a house on the corner of Algoma, and I can't remember what the other road is. There's 4 different addresses in that one building. But it's one tax parcel. So are they gonna get charged $600 or $150?
If it's considered a fourplex, because it would be considered a fourplex because it has 4 addresses, it would be charged 4 times that yearly fee.
Okay, that was the question
Because
that I had.
Each resident will, in that, I mean, there's 4 separate residents because it's 4 addresses. They'll have to have 4 cans. Up to a fourplex.
Each residential unit hypothetically would get a can.
Correct.
Okay, that, because I've heard it explained both ways and I needed to know how that would be charged, because there are.
A scenario like that, then if they were to go to a dumpster, then they're taken out of that program?
With this, it was listed as fourplexes being included, everything up to a fourplex.
Okay.
Everything beyond a fourplex, they are on their own.
Chad,
But
can you make that
theoretically,
a little bigger?
Bigger?
theoretically, that fourplex could have only 2 garbage cans.
Better.
So now they're paying double.
Did we know what it was gonna be for administration costs?
That's what Robert just talked about.
The administrative costs, I went over, it is 93 cents the first year. It goes up 1 penny each year on that monthly fee. So that you're seeing right now is included fees and everything for that monthly fee of, like either 1268 or 1229. That's with the fees included.
So these would be the rates that if we went with them, that,
Correct.
okay, that they would get
Because
charged.
their rates did not change. What they submitted in their RFP, the exact same amount was added to each one. And that's why it's set at a flat rate versus a percentage increase every year.
Would we still be getting the same service? What I'm saying is, right now, we're getting recycling every 2 weeks.
Yes, this was set up for weekly garbage, every other week recycling.
And we don't see no opt-out option, correct?
There is no opt-out option with these prices you see in front of you.
In the bid or the RFP specified no opt-out option.
Correct,
If there was an opt-out option, these prices more than likely would change.
yes.
So then my next question is, do we know how many residents or parcels there are that are single versus duplex, triplex, quads?
Yes, suppose we can't find it on there. I was gonna look up the RFP because those were listed. It was 24, but this was including everything. An average of 24.50 for services. Of which, can't remember offhand how many were classified as duplexes to fourplexes. Those kind of came together. I had an average of a majority of them being duplexes when they included multifamily parcels. So a majority of them were duplexes when it was considered multifamily, less 3 and 4plexes. The exact numbers. Thank you.
So I guess I'm still struggling with this. Thank you for all of the work that you've done, by the way, because I know we asked you to do a lot more and you're extremely busy as it is. And I am still struggling with this because I can't, the math isn't mathing. I'm not mathing. I can't determine whether or not I'm actually going to be saving the majority of the residents $100 a month or a year. Yeah, it's $100 a year versus the amount of money that we would be requiring other people to pay. I can't figure out, that's where I'm struggling. Requiring people who currently share a can to now individually pay.
That would be, do we have any idea of how many residents are?
That's what I don't, that's the
houses in
question I
town
don't
do
have.
not
The answer I don't have.
Garbage service, I mean, can.
And in
GFL
the
tell
initial
us-
packet last month, I put up the survey, but the survey was just a
Right,
small little piece of the city, and there's I do not have that answer as to how many actually have garbage service and who doesn't.
Didn't they say the last time we had a meeting on that, that it was 500? 500?
That's correct. That was about what we were figuring, about 500.
500 do not have service?
500 people paying $100 or being forced to pay $152.60.
Versus how many people who will save $100 a month. That's what I'm not, I'm not,
I think it comes down to that you asked us to try to find the best rate in
yeah, no,
garbage
I
collection.
get it.
This is the best rate, requiring everybody to have garbage collection, and the cost of making it a mass, program for the city. This gives your best rate. So as alderpersons, you need to decide, are you gonna require people to get the best rate that we can find, or keep on the current program that you have today?
Hard time forcing people to buy something.
How long is
Right.
the contract for?
I mean, this is great, the way they got it laid out. But I can't see forcing somebody to have somebody pick up their trash. I mean, that's my opinion.
And that's the questions you're gonna have to answer, because you had residents in here requesting that the city get garbage collection. So as alderperson, you need to make the decision whether you're gonna, go into the program or tell the ones that were here asking you for help, say, I'm sorry, we feel it's better that we, not force it on everybody.
So the question was asked, how long is this contract for? And that was 5 years, right?
Yes, it's based off of those years. Correct. And most communities do like a 5-year contract.
Out of the surrounding communities, how many already have contracts versus don't?
So I've asked around, and that this is becoming the norm, that most communities are going to this. Several of the people that I have asked didn't understand that people still paid for garbage. They're like, isn't that on your taxes? And that was the majority answer of outside our community.
A lot of these questions came up. We had discussion last month. About 3,000 homes in the city, Dave told us. So, I mean, we were doing some math. We had the whole discussion of our city maybe be cleaner, we'd have less garbage complaints, this, that. Public
And I think-
benefit, Tim brought up a good point of, the object is to save, to get the best price for the majority of citizens. Those are all parts of last month's discussion. We're asking a lot of the same questions here, and I need to excuse myself to use the restroom quick. But
I'm obviously not in favor of not having an opt-out and like the discussion of making people pay for garbage that currently don't. However, it was just said that the majority of folks will be saving money. I'll be saving money myself. The majority of you guys here will be doing that. A lot of these questions have been asked. And from what I've understand, it is a trend. I mean, right or wrong, see, it's kind of an option to look at. Even though that I'm not in favor of not having an opt-out. That's my take on it.
Any other comments?
I'm happy with GFL. Cause I don't have recycling with them. I have Allegheny County. So I
Everyone-
think GFL is doing fine.
Everybody's got. their
And
separate-
I'm one of them that always wanted to change. I want somebody else.
So you bring up a good thing. I've had people contact me and reach out that if they do go to the contract, that they would like to see harders, that they are fed up with GFL. I have not had the good comments. I mean, it's easy to say the bad comments because everybody will rightfully say that. But That's the intel that I have had on if we go with the contract that they prefer to go with Hardage.
Look at the numbers, it's the same numbers either way. You know, GFL herders, they're pretty competitive, so. Like John said, we kind of hashed this out. I thought we were all in agreement to kind of go forward with it. Are you looking for direction as to which company to go with, or what direction are you guys looking for?
So I think you got three choices. Number one, are you guys gonna go with the COI contract? Which company? And then are you going to go with the garbage only option and continue with Outagamie County for the recycling program? Then you can see the fees, what that would be here. Or are you going to go to a contract? We would have to contact Outagamie County and go through the process, whatever was in our contract with them, to cancel that contract with Outagamie County Recycling, and then sign the contract with the provider for garbage and recycling. So those are kind of your three choices.
Correct.
What's that?
GFL now has Outagamie County because they bought LRS. Just so you're aware.
Yes, yes. So the point that Chris just made, GFL, I believe, is now the recycling provider for Outagamie County as well.
I guess I'm looking for a motion.
I make a motion that the city goes with citywide contract with GFL and remains recycling as is with Outagamie County.
Motion's been made.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's not on this
Public
committee, he
Works.
can't make a motion.
Not on Public Works, I'm sorry.
Yep, sorry about that. So I'm still looking for a motion.
I would make a motion to go with GFL.
Motion has been made to go with GFL. Can I get a second?
And which one? Which option? Garbage only or garbage and recycling?
Mike,
What do we have to do? I guess my thought is, what do we have to do, to cancel our contract with Outagamie County now?
We'd have to look at it, but I remember seeing that there's some information in the contract about, canceling it. There's so many days notice. I can't remember what it was on the top of my head, but we do have the option of opting out of that program.
So,
If
but
you
my
do
understanding,
GFL, you wouldn't have to cancel the contract, right?
right, if we did garbage and recycling with GFL, since GFL does Outagamie County recycling now anyway, since they bought them out.
But
They didn't buy the county out.
yes, so if you do garbage only, the Outagamie County contract remains. GFL is a provider. All that recycling material goes to Outagamie County landfill. The
Okay.
option of doing garbage and recycling, and what we were told by
Okay.
GFL, was that garbage and recycling goes to GFL's landfill. And you can see there's a slightly better rate because they can go to their drop site here.
Okay. I understand now. Thank you.
Okay, if that makes sense. You know,
Yes,
if you stay with the
yes.
county.
I
all
forgot about
recycling-
the fact that the recycling goes to Outagamie County's landfill.
And all solid waste continues to go to Outagamie County landfill because that pays for the program. If you go
Yes.
with garbage and recycling, for example, GFL, they would take that to their landfills. That pay a
Okay.
different rate.
Okay. Thank you.
I will make my
Did I get
motion,
that right, Tim? Okay, I got a nod in the back, so I just want to make sure.
I would make my motion to go with garbage and recycling. GFL.
motion's been made. Looking for a second.
I have a question on that. So so essentially that motion is getting rid of Outagamie County.
Mhm.
So people paid for that container already.
Mhm.
That container stays with the property address. Would we be looking at a new container fee? or
They told us last meeting, that's all included.
so basically we'd be just telling Outagamie County, thanks for all these years, sorry. And then we don't know if we have to pay them anything, right?
We would look at their contract. If you guys make the motion tonight, it would be a recommendation to council, and we would double check in the contract. If there's any pertinent information that we need to provide, we can provide at the council level before you make your final decision. But yes, we would look at what that process would be to opt out of the Outagamie County recycling program.
But to your question, are you gonna get new bins, correct? From GFL or the city?
It sounds like he answered it. We own the bins already. We paid for them initially.
Exactly, but moving forward, who replaces them?
The recycled containers were part of the service in the contracts, right?
Okay,
The recycling containers are paid for by the property owners.
Mhm.
They're not property of New London.
The city.
Correct. We purchase them, and then as new residents need them, they pay for them, or that fee is put on their taxes, so the can is at that property.
so if it's damaged, it's on the property owner.
If it's damaged by them, if it's damaged by the hauler,
Right.
then it goes through a process, but then it's on the hauler if it can be proved that the hauler damaged the can.
And if it's on the resident, then they get a hold of the city to purchase a new one.
Right now, that is the process.
Perfect.
I just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't get hit, but you know, I have no problem with Outagamie County, but that is a slap in their face. I didn't want to just all of a sudden them come and take the cans and say, well, okay, fine, but pay another $90 for a can. I just checking.
I guess that would be a question.
Okay, so we have a motion. We need to either second or let it die and then go to discussion.
I will second it. The motion made by Mr. Barrington, seconded by myself, to go with GFL for the garbage and recycling at the numbers that are listed on the board. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's see some hands.
Am I allowed to vote? I even know.
Yep,
Just so you
absolutely.
know how I stand.
We got 5. No. 4. So the motion passed.
That'll be the recommendation of council.
The recommendation of council, correct. Okay, Robert, we'll keep you rolling. Present the Public Works 2026 budget.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Should I roll?
Do you want to give them a second or do we want to roll?
We have 2 out that are using facilities, I imagine.
Give them a second. That way they can see it. It can't be that long. Won't be long.
I'm not on this committee, so
I ain't either.
I gotta get some dinner.
Big agenda for one day.
We just roll, Chad?
If you guys are ready.
Let's just roll.
Okay. So Department of Public Works budget overview for admin and supervision. Last year's budget or 2025, you can see is 331, 297. proposed is 347,803 with a difference of 15,206 or 4.59%. Software increases, change in fringe benefits, and annual proposed wage increase. Any questions on admin and supervision for budget overview for street? Budget overview, streets, 2025 budget was 902,504. The proposed 26 budget is 936,821, difference of 34,317 or 3.8%. The main things that adjusted the difference here was increased in salt costs. I added a small increase to sign, paint, and tool budgets. Signs are getting more expensive. Paint is definitely getting more expensive. And the small tool budget, it was minimal, it was like $500. Fringe benefits and annual proposed wage increase. Any questions with this? So Department of Public Works overall street budget, you're looking at a difference of 49,524 or 4.01, and that sums up both aspects that I just showed. Sanitary maintenance, Ben hit on a few of these in his updates. This difference in maintenance, so this is collection system, so you're talking anything that brings it to the plant, not the plant. So the increases there were increase in sewer televising and truck maintenance. Then increase to transfer to the general fund. There's always a portion of the rates that go towards the general fund. That is a difference of 2.69%. Is there any questions on the sanitary maintenance side?
There might be a decrease then, and because we bought the sewer televisor, I see
no, this is that sewer televising for that portion. That's when Ben contracts that out for section televising.
Oh, okay.
So when they come in and do the robot down each one, each main from manhole to manhole, and do that inspection of the structures.
Right. Okay.
So the sewer plant, you can see a very small difference. These were an increase in equipment repair and an increase a little bit for the engineering costs for the new plant grade. It came out to 27,700 or 1.8%. There's the biggie. I should have kept clicking my clicker. As Ben indicated, since I've been here, this was an item that was on there at $80,000 when I first started, and now we're looking at 215 for an annual budget for sludge disposal. Facility maintenance, this was only a difference of 5,489. This was building maintenance increases, a little increase in the electric, water, heating, and proposed wage increase came out to 1.54%. Ooh, and that's it. Any questions on any part of the budget?
No questions for Robert? All right, thanks, Robert. We'll move on to consider approval utility easement change for proposed Irish Meadows subdivision development.
So originally, out at Irish Meadows back, when you remember the old, plat and how that roadway kind of came from Alcan, did that twist and came through the, proposed to come through that piece of property there to tie up into the East Ridge subdevelopment. Being that there's no longer a connection there, when Irish Meadows took place, we started looking at better options for both Irish Meadows and for that property owner on the corner. As you can see, the easement, the old easement went straight up 90 to end, and there's no really good way to relay and hook up to the sanitary and water aspects with that type of easement. So, Chad sat down with the property owner, had discussions about relocating this easement, putting it more on the property border. And this way it would help out, keep it on a property line, bringing in, sanitary and water through that area. Making it a much more clean process, for everybody involved. Did I miss anything, Chad?
You're right on.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
Seeing no questions, looking for a
I'll make a motion, approve the utility easement change.
motion made by Mr. Dorsey, second Mr. Barrington to consider approval utility easement change for the proposed Irish Meadows subdevelopment. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion on yard waste in the streets. Mr. Garski?
As you read in your packet in the memo, I pretty much summed it up. This has been a growing problem, especially this year. And it's one of those things where we're receiving a lot of calls, as soon as you get any type of wind elements, in any one of these storms, it's, are you coming through to do a collection? And defining an actual storm event, I think it's critical to point out that there has to be significant, damage, something that you see like on the news where you're having multiple trees down and items like that where we need to respond, and it's more of an immediate response and then a cleanup at that point. A onesie twosie brush thing, a branch falling. This is something that we provide a yard waste site, and residents can take their items there. They pile it on the streets. It's really hard to address it right now, especially with staffing, and I put all this extra work on them this year, trying to involve them into more road repairs and items like that. They've been really busy, so it's been a struggle. But I like to implement this, and that'll kind of coincide with a fee schedule I want to bring forward next month. But when the sweeper's out and we're identifying these areas of all these, brush piles, branches, grass piles on the curbside, that we'll have a door hanger that we can hang on their door with all the information needed, that, and our number if they have any questions, and be able to dispose of it within a certain time period, or we can take care of it, but there will be a cost because it's taken away from other things that we need to get done.
I love that idea.
I do too.
Love it. When you do Dexter Street, make sure you bring extra. They don't just wait for a storm, they just cut their stuff and throw it in the yard or out in the road anyway, so it doesn't matter if it storms or not.
I know it costs money, but, that approach is a good idea, but if he's got to stop a street sweeper and put a door hanger on. I mean, that's one way to get the property owner's immediate attention, but one of these times, and I hate to keep bringing this up, the utility bills. What's wrong with having a bright piece of pink paper in the utility bill? And on one side, you talk about wet, flushable wipes, and on the other side, you say it is illegal to leave debris in the street during non-collection times.
Cause I bet you 90% of those people don't even read that.
Right.
And now there's gonna be a charge for that, and I don't wanna pay extra money when we have a staff right there to identify the problem.
And I
They
think-
can document it, take a picture of it, place a door hanger. There's your warning.
And once you put a couple of them out, Facebook
The-
will be
the-
really good and
I'll
everybody's
volunteer.
gonna find out.
I'll volunteer to put some out. I got my paint job scratched up. Good thing I don't drive nice vehicles, but 3 months, same branch. Finally, I took a trailer and picked it up. And I ended up filling the trailer on the way down to the site. Because there was a wind, little bit of wind, not bad. But
Which was there for a
people
long
have
time.
forgotten, after a couple big storms and they just forgotten that, hey, we only have yard pickup twice a year in the city, and
It's costly, it's time consuming.
I love it. Great idea.
yep, it has to stop.
Seems like we're all on board with that one. Any further questions, sir, Robert? All right, slide into the director's report.
Okay, I'll make this as brief as possible. We had one service anniversary, Corey Iort, city mechanic, 4 years, September 7th. Updates on projects, Oshkosh Street. PTS is mostly complete with their work. They have pretty much pulled off site except for a few pieces of their equipment, which means almost all utility work underground is done, completed. There's one lateral that we're still working on because of partial collapse on the private side. So we're working with a contractor to try to get that remedied as soon as possible. They also finished CIPP lining, so they will be back, PTS will be back in town, taking those stacks down that they used to apply that liner, taking them down at frost level, capping them off. Summers is on site. They continue with base work. They are currently up to Millard Street, working to the south. This is where they pretty much take the base down the full width of the road, take it down a foot plus in some places to achieve that new grade. Lay down your fabric, your grid, place 12 inches of fresh new stone down and compact. I'm still waiting for word on the curbing crew. Usually they wait until they're pretty close to done with all the sub-base work because those crews move pretty quick. I mean, as soon as they have staking done, they put their string line in and curb goes in fairly fast. They'll be right behind it with apron work. House and Alcan, that is pretty much complete. We have road signs or street name signs put out. We had one conflict with the IRI ride on Alcan. This means that during monitoring the road profile, there's a dip by the driveway kind of before the projected Irish Meadows. That dip technically could fall under a deduct as far as overall payment. But being that there's kind of contemplation on road speed at that location, the state still has some questions and they're going back and forth with the consultant on site. So hopefully that'll be worked out soon and we'll know what's going on there. North Street is now complete, road surface, curb and gutter. I was out there first thing this morning, everything's draining nice. The catch basin's working great. The water actually gets to it, so it's a beautiful thing. All they have to do is fill in behind the curb and that project is complete. Asphalt patching is all complete except for the 2 patches on Cook Street. We had a little sub grade issues in 2 locations on those patches, so we're currently digging them out, adding some breaker to firm it up, and they'll be in behind us putting that asphalt in there. And that is all I have for my report.
Any questions for Mr. Garski? If none, future agenda items?
One would be fee schedule for sure. That will be on next month.
We're gonna have to have. Where's that wastewater treatment, is it gonna be, that's gotta be under discussion
There
yet.
could be future discussion.
Well,
on
there's
that.
gonna have to be some decisions made, so.
Yeah.
we're gonna have to talk to Mike and see when the preliminary one, just like what his schedule was, so. Talk to your residents, talk to your neighbors, get everybody on board, share this video. He did another nice job giving the information of what's going on, so, the more people know, the better, but yeah, that's gonna have to be a decision sooner than later.
Yeah, I guess if you're listening, we're all easy to get a hold of. Shoot us a message, whatever, talk to us and we can get some opinions. Next Board of Public Works meeting is October 6th at 5:15. Should be good to that. Nothing else, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Make the motion to adjourn. I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Barrington. For adjournment, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.